All right. Good evening, everyone. I now call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of Oak Grove School District on December 14th, 2023 at 5:06 p.m. May I please have a motion and second to approve the agenda as submitted?
Item 9.2, financial audit report to be after consent, as we have a guest speaker that will present that item. Request that like to move that after consent if possible.
Okay, thank you. So with that edit and update, may I please have a motion and second to approve the agenda as submitted or as amended?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, the agenda has been approved as amended. So the board will now recess to close session to discuss the public employee performance evaluation of the superintendent, public employee discipline release dismissal government code section 54957, and confer with labor negotiator. Persons wishing to address the board on closed session items may use the raise your hand Zoom feature to speak. Please reference the agenda item number in your public comment, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Is there anyone to speak to these items?
There are no virtual comments.
Seeing none in person, we will now recess to closed session and return at approximately 6:05 p.m. here. Thank you so much. We also just want to wish everyone here in person and online that's watching a very special holiday season. We're so grateful to be serving on the Oak Grove School District Board, and we're very happy and honored to be a part of this community and be a part of the force of leadership that we have amongst us. And so we wish all of our families, all of our staff members, just very positive vibes, community. Wish you all well as we close the first half of this school. We do have some exciting items to get through this week, including an informational item from the Special Education Task Force that I know we're all looking forward to hearing from, and as well as our yearly board reorganization. So please bear with us as we discuss reorganization when that item comes up. And so tonight, during our regular board meeting, there are many opportunities for the public to address the board, public hearings, public comment during a specific agenda item. And so if you wish to speak to the board, please complete the online request to speak form or use the raise your hand feature when the agenda item is reached. This will help you better manage the and when it is your turn to speak, your microphone will be unmuted online, and you will have 3 minutes to speak before the microphone is muted. The Brown Act governs meetings of governmental bodies in California, and your comments to the board must be specific to the agenda item that you are addressing. If there is no specific item, you're welcome to present comments during the general public comment. The Brown Act permits public criticism of the district's policies, programs, and services, and of board members' action. Constitutional First Amendment free speech rights permit the public to criticize employees' job performance. However, the board will not listen to personal attacks, name calling, or the ridiculing of employees. Please note that you are attending a public meeting of the Board of Trustees doing the public's business, and this is not a public forum for public debate. I'd be honored to recite the land acknowledgement, but Member Pacheco has kindly requested a continuance. I'll pass it on to you.
We acknowledge that the Oak Grove School District and our schools occupy the unceded territory of the sovereign nation, skies, land, and water. Remember among the people of the story, teaching, responsibility, share their daily lives and work, strategic communications.
Thank you so much. Member Pacheco. Superintendent Monson, will you please lead the flag salute?
so long as they maintain a 2.75 GPA, they complete courses, 8 G courses in the school, and they turn in their application on time by the deadline. They're guaranteed a spot in San Jose State. Now we have to remember that San Jose State receives about 35 to 40,000 applications a year for freshman class. There's 28,000 students that attend San Jose State total. So it's about 7,000 spots for 35 to 40,000 applications. And some of those programs are impacted that they're full. So they won't accept applications or new entries into the spots. But if you graduate from one of our East Side schools, they're guaranteed a spot. They go in and they're accepted in San Jose State. One of the things that it's also really important to recognize is U.S. News and the Wall Street Journal they rank universities across the state. So San Jose State has ranked in the top 6 in engineering, in marketing, in accounting, in video design, exactly. And they were ranked number 1 in the Western Hemisphere as best value school nationwide. And so it's a fantastic option. We recognize that students from our districts will explore a multitude of universities throughout throughout our country, but they also have an option, an excellent option for a university that also does great work just right here in our backyard. So they learned about that. They were really excited to understand about that. And then also, I don't know if you had an opportunity to walk the halls. They were our judges for our holiday, best holiday decoration that our district office participated in. And, you know, it is quite a scene to see Nancy rap to their theme for our ESD team as well. So that was fun. And so, you know, as we wrap up 2023, I just want to express just a tremendous level of gratitude for our outstanding students, our dedicated staff, our supportive parents, and the community that we serve. Together, we continue to strive to have excellent opportunities for our students, for our community. And so long as we continue to work through a collaborative effort, I think the opportunities are. So I want to acknowledge and also thank our bargaining teams for continued collaboration as well. I think when we work together, daunting challenges don't seem as daunting. And the opportunities to do great things are amplified when we do that together. So thank you also to our joint board, as we in many ways have charted uncharted territories, whether it's through our policies, through the implementation of new curriculum, really a statement around that every single student is welcome in our classrooms, regardless of their background, regardless of their needs, and the policies that our board has authored are true statements of that community for our community. So I also acknowledge all of your work as we conclude this 2023 school, and look forward to that continued level of commitment. I think we all have that level of commitment, continuous improvement as we welcome the new year in the near future as well. That concludes my comments. Happy holidays.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Monson. That brings us to the report of the closed session. And so the board did meet in closed session to discuss the public employee performance evaluation of the superintendent and no action was taken. Public employee discipline release dismissal government code section 54957 and no action was taken. And confirm with labor negotiator and no action was taken. So that brings us to, looking at that one, right? This brings us to election of the board president. So at this time, this is what we do yearly, where we reorganize ourselves in our leadership positions. It has been a practice of us since I've been on the board that we transition amongst us leaders up here as board members. And so I will open the floor and make a motion that we that I move to elect the board president as Beja Gonzalez.
I second. Trustee Gonzalez. It's been awesome to see you join our board. Just in your second year now, right? Third, yeah. Oh yeah, third. Time flies. And from one past president to the next president. Already taken our district to incredible areas. You've helped navigate us through some extremely thick crises and also symbols for our community and also a source of inspiration for a lot of students who want to see themselves in the trustee. So I'm excited to have you in our district.
It's been incredible being your partner as president. I always just really appreciate the sounding board. And of course, you being a mother, parent in the district, you provide such an incredible perspective. So I've appreciated growing with you over these past couple years. We do have a first and a second, if there's no other questions or comments from trustees. Any public comments?
No virtual comments.
May we please have a roll call vote?
Member Martinez?
Aye.
Member Jaco?
Aye.
Member Pacheco?
Aye.
Vice President Gonzalez?
Aye.
President Hernandez?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Before we go to the next item, I just want to take an opportunity to acknowledge our president for the past couple of years. Again, I think working through the pandemic and everything as a result coming out of the pandemic, it's just been challenging times. I think your leadership and your thoughtfulness and always as well our community just exemplary. So congratulations. So present the certificate to recognize the outstanding contributions in honor and recognition of your significant contributions and leadership and board president for the Oak Grove School District and the accomplishments that have elevated the reputation of our district. Board president from December 9, 2021, December 14, 2020.
We can wait if you, yeah, okay, it's up to you. Okay.
Well, let me start off my presidency by just thanking everybody for their work. I do really just want to give Madam President Carla her flowers. She's been an amazing, like you said, partner, and she's been such a source of stability, especially because she's taken up presidency twice, which it's a huge responsibility, right? You have to run the meeting. There's tons of things that go into it, and she's done it with grace. She's, been in the boardroom calm and cool-headed and taken a lot of what's been thrown at her with such grace. And so thank you so much. You've been an amazing role model, and I hope that I can fill your shoes adequately. Thank you to the rest of my team that have always been so patient and kind and completely watered me through this whole process. And the last thing I'm gonna ask for is grace from all of you guys for the next couple of months while I transition into this role. There's going to be a lot of mess ups in the agenda and things like that. So please bear with me while I get my bearings on the position. So with that, we go into item 4.2, and that is the election of vice president. At this time, I will take nominations for vice president.
To trustee Tanya Jacob, Dr. Tanya Jacob, to vice president.
Next second. Okay, and now we can open it up for board discussion.
Tanya, obviously, it's you're a leader at the state level. You've been a powerful force for teachers and kids, not just the but in counties across California. I can't wait to see also get your feet wet in this leadership position, and then also prepare yourself to be president. So from one former vice president to the next. This presidency. District alone. Trustee Gonzalez, behind the tailwind of our incredible past president, Carla Hernandez, to of course our district want to be in great in growth and development and for your leadership, superintendent was. So
I also just want to share, I recognize that we're a very young board in terms of just the number of years that we've been serving, at this level. And Trustee Jaco came in already with feedback and questions very early on in your first year, right? And so that is the type of leader that we want leading the board. And making sure that we are delivering our best to all of you here. So I think this will make a powerful team. And I'm so looking forward to just growing alongside.
And just to echo off of that, I think that when I became board vice president, I didn't have even half the preparedness that you have. You know what I mean? I think coming here with a great level of experience, I'm so excited to work with you and partner with you. I feel safe in taking this position, having you by my side. So if that concludes more discussion, now we can move in to a roll call vote.
Member Hernandez,
Aye.
Member Martinez, Member Pacheco, Vice President Jaco, President Gonzalez, motion carries.
president, and then it was changed to president and vice president, even though it was against the bylaws. So I hope that that doesn't happen again. Then is my point.
I mean, I would like to hear from the rest of the board, your opinion on this. I'd like to get a complete picture.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's clear that we need to follow the bylaws, and then if there's interest in changing it, then we should revisit the bylaws. So, but I'm okay with leaving it as is.
From my understanding, though, we've previously gone against the bylaws, right, when we appointed myself vice president, and so it's a possibility. Again, I'm just seeing what the
I'd prefer on my first day as vice president that we don't take action to violate the bylaws. And I would like that on record. Thank you.
I think, okay, then.
Noted. And I think we just realized what my first error was on my first day as president. I didn't know. So apologies that we had violated bylaws. I did not know.
Okay, amazing. So are there any other amendments or changes? Okay, awesome. So if there are no other changes, may I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Before a second, part of this is also the dates of the board meetings. And so it's the second Thursday of the month, with the exception of when there's a conflict with the second Thursday of the month. If, as an example, if there's sometimes the breaks fall such that we're on break, when typically that would happen. So there's an adjustment when that occurs on the agenda meeting dates. And so.
I think we're open for a second now.
Mhm.
Second.
Can we have a roll call vote?
Member Hernandez? Member Martinez? Member Pacheco? Vice President Gonzalez? Sorry, I apologize. Vice President Jaco?
Aye.
President Gonzalez?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, and now we'll move on to item 5, public hearing. I will now open the public hearing on energy conservation project at Baldwin Elementary HVAC replacement. Is there anyone anyone from the public to speak on this item?
Before to the item, we also just want to provide an explanation of the item just in case there are any public comments, and Associate Superintendent Evans will provide that.
Yeah, this public hearing relates to Government Code 4217, and it allows for public works projects to be completed as a design build delivery method. If the project is related to energy and creates an energy cost savings over time. If there's a reasonable energy savings, then we can go directly through a design build process, but we have to go through the public hearing to do that. We're using this method to update and replace the boilers and chillers at Baldwin with new HVAC systems. And that's the purpose of this public hearing, is to allow any public comment related to that. The actual action item will be 8.1 later in the meeting.
Okay, again, I'll open it up for any public comment.
There's no virtual comment.
Okay, and item 6, I will now move into public comment. This is an opportunity for individuals to address the board on any school-related issue, which is not a part of this evening's agenda. Are there any individuals here who wish to speak to the board at this time? Have Danielle Ridgway?
My name is Danielle, I'm here tonight to express my frustration and help. I've tried all advice, recommendations, protocols, etc. I'm unable to do my IA position. People are having a hard time hearing.
Najib, is that one? If you can take a look, please.
to ask what the issue was, why it wasn't resolved, why there was no effort to resolve it at the mediation. Because ultimately, it was the students that were suffering because of a lack of a resolution. And so, we get into this power struggle back and forth, but we should be looking at what is good for the students. Finally, I just want to say that there are a number of special education support staff, teachers, school psychologists here tonight. Please listen to them when they speak. They are the experts. They're the ones in the field, on the ground, doing the work. I know our school psychologists almost never show up to these board meetings, but there's a bunch of them here tonight. Please listen to them when they voice their concerns. Thank you.
Are there any comments online at this time?
There are no virtual public comments.
Members, executive team, colleagues, members. I just want to give you some updates on a few items. Um, for community schools, are talking, having conversations with Superintendent Monzo. We are pleased to hear that the school board will be doing a deeper dive to learning more about community schools, and then how it can impact positively Oak Grove and our families and our whole community. And please let us know if you'd like to have any additional information or support. We'd love to be a part of that. And then for special ed, I do have a different piece to share with you. So it's typical for us to do data requests regularly just to find out different things in terms of class enrollments, what our average class size is, especially for primary classes. We did do a current data request on contracted special education staff. If you don't, if you're not aware of this, it's the only positions in our district where in our contract, it's okay to have contracted workers because sometimes special ed staff and teachers are hard to find. And so currently we have 14 staff members who are filled with contracted workers. That means they're contracted by companies like Ed Theory and I forget another, the other company. 9 of them are speech and language pathologists, one of which is still virtual, which is, it is a far cry from where we were a couple of years ago when we had 6 virtual SLPs. So 1 is better than 6. 4 of them are autism teachers, and 1 of them is a teacher in a class with severely handicapped students. So we do appreciate that the classes have the teachers that they need and that they're receiving the services. But it's always our interest to have them be OGSD employees for a number of reasons. One of which is there's more stability, there's benefits that Oak Grove can offer. They have the support of the union. They also have some other options, like if they are saving for retirement, for things like that. So they're not available, then they call on the psychologist or they call on the resource provider or other support providers or the instructional assistants. And so when you're doing that, when you're pulling people from what they're already doing, that creates just more stress on the whole system. And so we're already kind of stretched too thin. I think that's already been said. That's kind of the phrase for the night. We're kind of pulling one thread, and it's going to affect another thread, and it just puts more stress on the overall system. So I think it's important for us to kind of take a look at it as a whole. There's a lot of times where we come here, we share some things with you, or we email you about certain things. And I think those are important, but it's also critical to kind of step back and how do we look at this in a broader way, either recreate it and transform what we are doing in special ed in a way that is supportive of students and staff, and in a way that we're not burning each other out, because that's what's happening right now. Even before COVID, we had a very high turnover with psychologists. Very high turnover. Every year we were going through psychologists. So the other situation that we have been struggling with is that, and this is something that I have talked with Assistant Superintendent Chaidez already, and I know it's something that may be a discussion for the executive team, is that in the after school hours, those are the times that we usually have meetings for IEPs and for 504s that can sometimes go till 5:30, 6 o'clock sometimes. Per our CBA, our contractual bargaining agreement, our contractual day is 7.25 hours. For nurses and psychologists, it's 8 hours exclusive of a lunchtime. So sometimes the lunch is 30 minutes, sometimes it's like 40 minutes. So the meetings can extend our day by 30 minutes or to 2 hours. And we've been doing that without pay. It's basically like donating that time. That's been the expectation. We do not have the capacity to continue doing that. It's going to cause more burnout for us. So it's another look at what is the overall system that we are looking at? What is our goal? We want to have healthy minds, healthy bodies. Is it pushing people to the limit without any kind of relief? So Assistant Superintendent Chaidez and I talk weekly, and we have looked, and he has looked at and talked about looking at what the consistency is throughout. Are we doing all of that consistently and uniformly in some way with all the schools? Are meetings starting at particular times? We can't continue to stretch ourselves in that way. We want to give. That's just the nature of being an educator, but it's been really hard. And I know some of you up there who are educators, you know what I'm talking about. It's difficult. And I feel like even past, after 2020, things are just even more difficult because we prioritized during that time being at home and staying well and really being discriminating in how we spend our time. And so when we want to give to our students and be there for students and speak up for families and speak up for students, we feel it's a demonstration of our value and our time if we are compensated for that time. If there's a way to reconfigure that, then let's design it that way. We need a workable and effective change to that system. But on that note, I wanted to wish everybody a happy December. Congratulations to President Gonzalez and Vice President Dr. Tanya Jaco. I appreciate all of you, and I hope you all continue with us. It's a lot of work, and it's not glamorous, and but I trust the work that you do, and I hope you continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any representation from ASME tonight? How about CSEA? Okay, so then we will move on to item 7, consent agenda. And Superintendent Manzo, will you please present?
Thank you, President Hernandez. I'd like to recommend the board approve the consent agenda items as submitted.
I move to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Is there anyone from the public to address the board on this item?
Ken?
Hello? Hi, sorry, I am trying to talk about what our union was just talking about with the school psychologists. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk here or not.
Is there any public comment here in the board?
I can't hear anybody.
We're having technical difficulties on Zoom.
Yeah, it says tech is troubleshooting.
Yeah, I'll mute you for now. If we can come back to this topic, I'll unmute you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
For this type of, I think just create of how we get teachers, mentor teachers in our district. And so I just appreciate types of relationships that we're crafting, and I would really like to continue.
Thank you. What we can do is go on to item at the beginning of the meeting, we organized the agenda to hear item 9.2, the financial audit, immediately after consent. So why don't we move to item 9.2, and then we can come back to consent. Hopefully by that time we can have the technical difficulties resolved. That'd be okay. All right, so I'll have our Assistant Associate Superintendent, Mr. Mark Evans, introduce this item and our guest today.
Thank you. Each year, the district works with an outside auditor. Eat Bailey is our audit company to audit the books of the district. They audit our district, and they actually do specific audits related to our bond funds, Measure S and Measure P. We have our partner Ahmad Yarbe from Eat Bailey to kind of work audits with you.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board. This is the annual financial report for the district. The scope of the audit is to ensure that the financial statements are fairly stated. It is effectively an affirmation of the financial information that was presented to you previously by management. We typically begin the audit at the beginning of the calendar year, around February or March. We split the audit into multiple phases. The interim phase is when we take a look at the internal controls of the district. We observe the manner that you process receipts, the manner that you process disbursements and payroll. We like to see a review process and segregation between functions to management to close the books. We come in after the fact, confirm the balances. Again, it's an affirmation of the information that was presented to you previously, which is confirm these balances, make sure that these balances are correct. We will confirm your cash, we confirm your LCFF revenue, various numbers. It is not an absolute affirmation. It's in all material respects, that's how the opinion is formulated. And I'm pleased to let you know that we issued a clean opinion on these financial statements. We actually had no finding, no adjustments to the financial statements, and management has been very cooperative in giving us the information that we needed. Along with that, there's a couple of compliance requirements that you're a government, you receive federal funding. So you are required to have a federal audit, federal compliance audit. State also asks you to ask us to audit state compliance. That includes attendance, various state programs, and along with that, you have a bond requirement, bond audit requirement. That's for Measure S and Measure P. With respect to Measure S and P, it's just ensuring that the financial information, the assets related to those two measures are segregated from the district financial assets. And then with your project managers, and we make sure that the expenses that were charged to those two measures are in compliance with what the board has voted on, which is effectively modernization of the school. And then with respect to all these compliance opinions, we issued clean opinions, no exceptions to report. And with that, I'll be more than happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. Is there any support on this item?
Rochelle, are you able to, move back up and what I was told by our IT, Mr. Jim Kasimi, is that we tried on our end to replace the laptops, and it's trying one more thing that they actually hardwired, but it appears to be something on Zoom side that is creating an issue that's not allowing folks to call in. So we do regret that is happening, but we're trying one more time. The last effort here with a hardwire to see if that possibly helps, but maybe we can start with any questions from the board or any comments from the public.
Are there any comments here in person? Okay, then we can to questions, comments from the board. Thank you so much for your presentation. Great.
Thank you.
I do want to encourage those of you listening, please send in emails in the case that we cannot get over this technical difficulty. We still want to hear what you have to say on the consent agenda.
So, would you like to go back to a consent agenda item at this point, or would you like to continue on other items of the agenda while we're trying to continue to fix this item? Okay, we'll continue. And so with that, then we will be going to item action item 8.1.
So moving on to action item 8.1, approval of design build contract with SiteLogic IQ to replace Baldwin Elementary HVAC. Superintendent Montal, will you move through that?
Thank you, President Salas. This related to the public hearing that was open for comment earlier. And there was an explanation related to this item at that time as well. But just so it can be heard again, we'll bring Associate Superintendent Evans one more time to further introduce this item.
Yes, this is the approval of the design build contract with SiteLogic to replace the HVAC system in an elementary school. Currently, there's a boiler chiller problem in the spring of 22. In place to continue to have challenges. And
I will now entertain a motion.
This is for 8.1 HVAC.
Motion first. Okay, and is there anyone from the public to address the board on this item?
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that that's getting replaced. I did have some questions in regards to the last, I know we had gone through horrible, the Baldwin staff went to a horrible ordeal. Going through very heated times, while it was very hot. At the time, I guess I have a question. Are we going with both again? And what happened to that purchase? Are we getting a refund from what we had purchased before, or how does that work? Or we spent money for some chiller before, and I understand it was their error, but are we getting kind of monetary funding back from that?
There was a claim and there was a settlement to offset the costs for that. We had that replacement chiller back in 2022. And then we'll look and see if there's anybody else who had the use of the chiller, see if there's a secondary market for it.
And then you're going to get bids for
this process doesn't require a bid. That's part of that government code 2.7, because it's an energy project that generates savings on life. It's design build, which is how we kept it moving along and very equal.
Okay, thank you.
And then is there any more discussion? Okay, seeing no other discussion for the board, may I have a roll call vote?
Member Hernandez,
Aye.
Member Martinez.
Aye.
Member Pacheco.
Aye.
Vice President Jaco,
Aye.
President Gonzalez.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, so we will now move on to item 8.2, 2023-2024, first interim report, Superintendent Monzo.
Thank you, President Gonzalez. As you know, there are various benchmark dates that the board receives updates to part of the budget sequence for the year. And we're in one of those time frames where we present the first interim report. And to introduce this item, I'd like to have Associate Superintendent further present on this topic.
Thank you, Superintendent Monzo. I just wanted to kind of present this evening on our first interim report. The presentation up there in just a moment, but our first interim report is actually our probably more accurate report than the budget itself. When we actually present the budget, Sacramento has formally finished all or implemented all the details. So we're actually going off the date revised. By the time we get to the first interim, which is effective our financial as of 10/31, we have our staffing, we have our students. So then we have a more accurate insight into what our budget is actually going to be this year, and people are in the seats and staff are here as well. So when we start with in June, with the budget adoption, and then the estimated actuals are really our best work based on what we expect the budget to be and what we expect last year's budget to close out as. Because the estimated actuals that you see in June oftentimes have POs that are not fully complete. There could be expenditures that come in above expectations, and there could be expenditures that come in below expectations. So in June, we present at our LCAP meetings, we're giving you the best information we have at the time. But by the time we get to this point of the year, actually in September, our information is much better on last year. We present in September unaudited actuals. Those are usually on consent for you, and that is an accurate year after we close the books. We bring the auditors and get an accurate appraisal. And I'll show you the difference between our estimated actual and our unaudited actuals, and I'll also be presenting our differences in budget to our first interim of the revenues and the expenditure side. So come December now, we get into that first. And the audit, as we just saw presented. And then starting with the new year, looking at what's 24, 25. The governor's budget proposal in January and get that, update our assumptions and see what the new outlooks are for tax collection, things like that. And that'll inform us with our March 2nd interim report, second budget update for the year. And then we'll be shifting into looking into the new year, May revise after the taxes are collected in April. That June budget and the cycle starts all over again. This year was particularly challenging. Probably heard a lot in the news about state revenue collection because the budget was passed well before collection complete. The delayed collections for taxes being pushed off to eventually November. So we've seen some shortfall there. We'll talk about that as we go into next slide. There, those are the things we kind of reviewing. Talking about estimated actuals versus unaudited actuals, variance there. Same for budget first interim. We'll talk about what the assumptions are currently. We expect some of those to be changing in the year, in the months ahead. And then we'll be looking at the long term. How do we keep what we've got going and make sure we're able to stay and keep from keep the district healthy so that we maintain the programs we have. We'll be looking at some of the headwinds and the tailwinds we've got things happening as well. So that's there we go. So the first column estimated actual June, the middle column is September, and I think you'll see there's a lot of variance. Lately, one-time funds and flow of money, these things are a variance that never happened in the past, in my experience. And there are a variety of reasons for that. We've had programs come on board that we know are coming, but we don't have revenues yet. So you'll see in our revenue side, we get about $4.5 million more. Well, transportation money is coming. TK add-ons coming, but we didn't have that number, so they actually didn't get booked until summer. There were also some catch-up, small program that provides medical services, reimburses us for medical services, and they reconciled their books and catch up. So a variety of ticket items that increased our revenues substantially. And on the expenditure side, there were a number of expenses we anticipated but didn't come through. And these are oftentimes related to some one-time dollars. We had unfilled positions that we looked for the year, but they have been empty for several months, if not the whole year. There were many restricted funds. We'll talk about those coming in that just didn't fully implemented, so they can carry forward the year ahead. And there are also contracts. It could be contracts for services. They could be just the cost of electric bill become less than expected. So we end up having substantial savings on our expenditures, which puts us in a much healthier position. At the estimated actuals, we're expected to come in at about $7.5 million ahead, and came out $20 million ahead, so a $13 million difference. Much of that being in the restricted funds. Talk about that more. See at the bottom of the unaudited actual middle, the ending fund balance is $45 million, but about two-thirds of those, of the $45 million is restricted. The increase in ending fund balance of 13 million, almost 10 million of that is restricted, and about 4 million of it is unrestricted. So,
can you just define restricted a bit more so further understand?
Thank you. Restricted funds have very specific guidelines on how they can be spent. Some examples are ELOP funds that we can state where our after-school programs have to be spent on that. There's a large amount of educator effectiveness grant money that was given to us that's restricted to very specific uses for professional development. And that has to be spent over several years. So that carries forward. So those are restricted funds that are basically specified as to what purpose it need to be used for. And then the unrestricted is at the district's discretion on how to best use those funds to operate their programs. Slide kind of compares the budget in the first interim. And again, you saw much of the increased revenue that came from the unaudited actuals. Those carried through to the new year. In June, we were budgeting for about $135 million in revenue. But we came through to our first interim year, we're looking at about 144, $9 million more. The biggest contributor there is the source that we did, but we never have a guarantee. About 2.1 million came from the development agency. So the source of property taxes that schools get depending on the region they're in, but it's not something like the LCFF or a calculus for it. And until we get the letter of intent that said getting money, we don't. So that came in since the school year began, and that increased our revenues. Transportation money is coming in now, and it's booked to be a regular recurring $500,000 each year to help offset the transportation costs. Our enrollment is actually a little better than projected by about 100 students, so that also increases the amount of LCFF. Some positive information there. And I already mentioned the TK add-on for ongoing costs. We had E-rate. E-rate is a contribution we get from the federal government to help with our technology and our internet costs, and that was about $800,000. So a variety of different items came together to give us a healthy increase to our revenue. We did have an increase in expenditures, but not at the same rate that we did for revenues. Mostly in our expenditures, they were in 5,000 category to our contracted services, and they're to provide services for unable staff. I think the DEA was speaking about. So those costs to contract out for services that have been on the certificated payroll line shipped down there, and then other costs of contracted services as we use some of the restricted funds that were going to be used what we thought were going to be used last year, not here this year, to the 23-24 year. So the good news is that, you know, if we were looking at having an $8 million deficit at the end of this year, it's cut in half. It's about a $4 million deficit. And again, the $41 million that's left in the ending fund balance looks very nice. But it's really important to know what that number is, because it's made up of our restricted funds, are required set aside for reserves and all. So the components of the ending fund balance are really kind of critical to what that number is, because it's a nice big number, but it's not always at our liberty.
Quick question: fund balance that doesn't include restricted balance, or is it all part of the same thing?
Yes.
I see. Okay. And we're at 3% right now. What's our percentage right now?
The ending fund balance is our own fund. The restricted fund, the unrestricted funds set aside.
What's our percentage for restricted balance?
Our expected set aside for economic uncertainty, for economic uncertainty is 3%.
Is that the same thing that legally?
That's a subset of the $41 million.
Oh, I see. Oh, but is the legal restricted balance the same thing as that 3% just mentioned?
The ending fund balance are all the funds. And then let's just go to the next slide, because it actually breaks it down. So the ending fund balance. Here you'll see it. Let's just look at the center column there with unaudited actuals. All right. We had $20 million that was more than we expected when we closed our books. So there's that ending fund balance number of $45 million. That's the total number at the bottom line. But what is that number made up of? 33 million of it are those restricted funds that we have to use for very precise purposes. 4.3 million, that 3% economic reserve that we have to have. And so then the what we call unassigned is $7.8 million. Okay. So whereas you see the $45 million, it's set aside, most of that money is set aside to run our EBOP programs, to do our educator effectiveness grant, other programs that are designated dollars for specific functions. Some of those are the learning recovery grant, that big block grant that we got a while back, the arts and music grant, not Prop 28, the arts and music grant that was the one time. And one of the changes at budgets we were expecting all of the conversation today was they were going to cut all of these by about 50%. So we had lowered our expectation on the revenues, and then they came in less cut than we expected. So that also helped us at the start of the 23-24 year. So that gives us a nice, healthy balance, unassigned, and that helps us forward to our multi-years. Next slide, you see the same information that comes to this year. All right. Again, that $45 million there in the middle where we ended last year, but now we don't have a surplus, we have a deficit of $1 million. All right, not as bad as we were expecting in the budget. So our ending balance drops to 41 million. Of that 41 million, almost 29 is restricted, an even higher percentage than the previous year. We have a little more expenditure, so you'll see our 3% reserve ticks up, and our unassigned stays relatively healthy, about the same level, 7.9, just shy of $8 million. We say we ended the year with $41 million. I'll say how that $41 million is distributed. Any questions? A whole lot of information up. I
have a question on capital outlay, but let me know proper.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the variance you're right is pretty significant. Like it's when I compare the first interim of 22, second, then budget for June. So looking at capital outlay from first interim like a year ago, 2 million for 2024, 24, 25. For second interim, dropping down to 209,000 for 23, 24. 335,000, 2025, and budget. So, and then now for this year, it's around 82,000. So going from something that massive, right?
That's a result of one-time dollars. We had revenues that we were allowed to use for capital outlay in those one-time dollars, so we took advantage of that to not use general fund dollars to replace carpets or improvements. Instead, we used the one-time dollars that allowed us to do that. That was the anomaly. The current trend of activity on capital outlay. Oftentimes, capital outlay is not a big part of your general fund budget. It comes through bonds, it comes through deferred maintenance or machine restricted maintenance.
Looking at and our transfers from our special reserve. Looks like back to June first interim, second interim this year. Two transfers, 26 and now, which is 126.
Be some great segues here. Yes, and actually, the positive end to the year and those increases in revenues have pushed out the need to do that transfer till later on. So
after we spend 7.6 million of our special reserve in 26, of course, that's probably very different. How much?
I think the total reserve is around $15 million. So
right now or after
after total now, so we have another $70 million after that.
So around the same amount.
Basically, in budget when we had the 2 years put out, that pretty much took care of the special reserve and allocated at that time. So. And I think that's a good transition to our multi-year outlook because while this year looks good, and last year finished well, I think we want to look at the long game, make sure that we can sustain what we've got and what we want to implement. So looking at some of the budget functions, I used the dartboard, which is the School Services of California metric. And while I used it this year because that's our standard, and I'll use it again in January, March, it would be different then. And I'm all the information we've heard about the lower pull-up is not reflected in our numbers because a standard tool is not showing that yet. But we are anticipating that 3.94 pull-up next year is going to be more like 1 1/4. So drop by to just a third. That's not just a problem for 24, 25 because that number is 1 1/4 and that's what carries forward. You know, we don't get to carry forward 1 1/4 next year and then jump back up to 3.94. So that's going to also lower 25, 26 out years. Now we don't right now hear of any cuts in state revenue, but the information coming out of Sacramento and the Legislative Analyst's Office is challenging. They're anticipating a $68 billion deficit for the state budget over the year. So we'll be watching that closely and seeing what their suggestions are to close that gap. When it comes to Prop 98 funding, that's estimated to be probably in the upper teens as far as the deficit. And we'll update the dartboard as I mentioned earlier. The other component that affects us greatly is our funding, which is based on our slide, kind of shows our multi-year projections. Our enrollment continues to decline. We'll have a new demographic study in February, so we'll implement that in our March report to have the updated enrollment numbers. We were able to average it all the 3 years, well, actually, the big years from years ago are falling off, so our funded ADA is dropping at a faster rate.
So. I guess with the multi-year outlook. Every report that we've seen last year. But including this one seems to point that our fund balance is shrinking and the deficit spending is growing, and will we hit that critical point?
Kind of budget, it looked like it could be 1 year out. It's like now have another year of reprieve. So it was looking at 26, 27 is going to be the critical mass. And like you said, that is very hard to predict. Because you don't know where the state revenues are. Unfortunately, right now they're talking about a flat economy, not a recession. So we won't see a decline, but this plateau, it's going to be hard to navigate just if our expenses continue to go up. Other things that are helping is inflation moderating, so that's going to help our long-term outlook. If the RDE monies continue to come in, that's always a nice little bump that helps us out. Not enough to solve the problem that appears currently, but any
assumptions will change this trend of a deficit that is just growing.
I think there'll be some things that'll need to get, but I think seriously we have to look at that. There's just a general revenues and expenditures out challenge. We have to kind of see how we navigate that. And that's not unique to our district. Part of that is the challenge of declining. Part of it is the challenge of the STRS and PERS increases that have happened over the years. STRS is now flat, but PERS continues to grow. And our 25-26, our contract is negotiated 2025, so we don't have reflection in contract negotiation.
So it's predictable that the deficit or it's just gonna continue to grow.
It could go. It could go. We have some headwinds in front of us. We have some tailwinds too. I'll kind of share some of them. There are some positive things happening. When we talk about our ADA, we projected our ADA was going to our rates to be 93.5% for the foreseeable future. We have a much better outlook now this year. In January, we present our P1. I think in October, we were like 97% for that month. So I think if we keep that ADA rate up, that will provide students with more time in class and hopefully less need, and also provide funding too. So that's up to close that deficit. But it is a challenge. It's a lift going forward. And I think the next slide kind of talks about the multi-year revenues. And I think what you see here is, we have a very healthy year this year, and again, one-time dollars are falling out of the picture, and we're just kind of going down to our base funding, which is predominantly LCFF, and then the state budget is going to be going at a slower rate. Let's say it doesn't go into recession, it just kind of flattens with a 2% growth rate. Our revenues are not going to be going up because you have smaller COLAs and you have smaller population. So you can see our revenues get pretty flat in the out years. Our expenditures generally due to they aren't growing too fast, but again, as I mentioned, our contracts expire in 24, 25, and we kind of say how do we keep attracting teachers? That's a conversation we're having consistently. So, but you're right. This shows exactly that the deficit trends up, and in the 25-26 year, we'll be transferring in special reserve. That's a better position than we were at budget. As you mentioned, we were doing that 24-25 and 25-26, so that pushes us out a year. And we'll keep working to see what we do to close those deficits, both on the revenue side and there's opportunities on the expenditure side.
Since these are structural deficits, what are the structures that are within our control that can be impacted by direction or to reduce this trend, to stop this trend?
I think a lot of it's going to be on the revenue side. So our costs are fixed. Our salaries account for 75 to 80%, and those are fixed costs. And it's challenging to say, we're going to staff because we have class size limits both by contract and by state. We have needs that students have. So most of the budget that exists beyond that, there's not much to trim from. Take away the people or people that do business. So think, one of the challenges, if we're not seeing it at the federal level, are going to Title I or special ed funding or things like that.
All that's beyond our control.
Exactly.
So my question is, what within our control? Like, what are the top 3 things that we can look at that are feeding into this growing structural deficit?
Would ADA be enough of it that if we were to increase that?
As we increase ADA, our estimate is about a percentage, about $1 million. So we get up to 96% again, that's $3 million. That's ongoing, curve. So it's a challenge. I think we have to look at it on the revenue side, which is where we don't have any control, because there's not a whole lot of leverage on the expenditure side. Because so much of it is related to people. We can look at savings when it comes to power and efficiencies and things like that. But if 20% of our budget is non-personnel, there's just not that much. We can't eliminate that, but if you save 10% on that, it's only 2% of the budget. So those are good questions and they're hard answers. And then lastly, I want to kind of talk about, because I've been harping on this, the components of the balance. So the next slide kind of shows what we've got here. It's odd to say we're in a bad spot, 25.76, when our ending balance is $25 million. But again, it gets down to that, what's the components of the ending fund balance? In 25-26, $20 million of that is restricted. So one of the things we can do is find out how do we optimize those restricted dollars and spend those down to reduce that deficit. How do we figure out how to allow dollars to offset costs wherever it can. We have to play by the rules, but other ways to optimize those things. So I think those will be conversations and maybe hears me say that a lot. So, and then in 25-26, you'll see we have our economic uncertainty of about 4.5 million, but there is nothing in the unassigned any longer. What's unassigned? It's not designated. So it's above, it's not restricted, it's not committed, it's not your 3% reserve, it's just beyond that. So I think your question on the next slide, just the headwind. That lower COLA will make our outlook more bleak come the second interim. And I think I put down 1.5 at the time I did this. I'm hearing more 1.27 at this point. We do have inflation trends. They're not as bad as they have been, so that's helping. The declining enrollment is a headwind. It is across the state, and fortunately, it doesn't seem to be as steep as we thought it was at least this year. So hope for better on that front. Slowing state tax collections, and I think that's just going to be, again, maybe not a decline, but a plateau years going forward. And then I mentioned the PERS increases, but we have some things coming on the tailwind that we've got in our place. The increased rate of attendance I talked about, our increased enrollment this year that was higher than we expected. So hopefully we'll see people coming back. The expanded TK population, we have 2 more years of 3 months and 3 months of growing TK population, so that will help water as well. And with TK come the extra TK add-on, about $3,000 per student to help offset those costs for running TK, keeping those ratios small. We had the ending fund balance, that's what's keeping us going out through 26-27 now, so that's good. Our restricted funds, optimizing those. The transportation dollars, transportation is running a deficit, that extra $500,000 reduce that by into the general fund, and just kind of the reserves we have that are helping us go through those tough times. So that's allowing us time to address this very problem of how to mitigate our expenditures and revenue to reduce that deficit, so that we can from that. So, other questions I can answer?
Okay, seeing no other discussion. Thank you so much, Mark. May I have may I move for a roll call vote? Oh, a motion, sorry.
We'll be able to, yeah, we're able to comment. But first,
So I move that the Board of Trustees approve the positive certification of the 23-24 first interim report.
Rochelle, do we have anyone online who wishes to address the board?
There's no public comment online.
And are there any members of the board who wish to speak?
Just, appreciate trustee Pacheco's, inquiry, and it is, and also the difficult, they're great question, difficult answer. It sounds like we're gonna have some, necessary but challenging question, conversation around how to prevent us from getting to that place. And starting those I mean, I know those conversations are already happening, but just kind of prioritizing them and making them a part of our regular ongoing discussions are going to be necessary, especially because no one wants to be blindsided by any hard decisions that need to be made. And then also just making sure that we are finding ways to engage the community in genuine conversations, right? Not just surveys and polls and things of that nature, but really kind of leveraging the strengths of the voices of the community as well. Because we're going to need to be able to kind of come to a decision that, you know, reflects the needs as well as the strengths of our community.
Thank you so much, Associate Superintendent Evans. I think what I'm taking away is, you know, again, I do appreciate your questions, Trustee Pacheco. You know, just as we reflect with the numbers that we're seeing, I was, you know, continuing to think, what do we have control over as a board? And I think I've settled that it's ADA and of course enrollment. And I know we face challenging rent prices and housing prices here in the Bay Area, but I still feel like this is something that we can explore of how we can get our schools to be the type of schools that people are still trying to find a way to get in, even despite the challenging rent and housing prices. So that's something that I would definitely want to explore. Just again, how do we make us unique, right? How do we make sure that our programs are at the top of the line? I know there's so much potential in this district. We do so much great work every day. So I'd love to just continue to dive deeper and how this relates to our budget for years to come.
And I also want to thank you and the team, Superintendent Monzo and everybody, just for assembling the report, crunching the numbers, making it digestible for all of us. You know, it's great to see all the sources of revenue. It's interesting to see the variance, but it's also I'm glad that we can have the hard conversations and that we can pose the questions that we need to pose, and because there are going to be some tough decisions in the horizon. And as Vice President Jaco says, that sounds nice, we have to make sure that nobody is surprised. And so I think my just big takeaway is let's just really identify ways to do everything possible that's within our control, use the brains that are here in our community and the board to find those solutions. And let's not be too long until it's, you know, times with layoffs, school closures. No one wants to see those, right?
I just wanted to underscore, because it's the second time now that I've had a chance to hear your presentation, and I just want to underscore how challenging district budgets are to understand, even though they're probably the most transparent. And I really appreciate just you being able to, as Trustee Pacheco mentioned, present it in a way that's digestible, that I feel our families at home and those that are here will understand kind of what's happening and where the money is going.
No further discussion. May I have a roll call vote?
Member Martinez?
Aye.
Member Hernandez?
Aye.
Member Pacheco?
Aye.
Vice President Jaco?
Aye.
President Gonzalez.
Aye.
Motion carries.
So we are actually going to rewind back to item 7, consent agenda. And I want to open it up again for public comment.
Seeing no virtual comment.
Okay. Go ahead and close on item 7, and that brings us to.
We still need a motion since we skipped it, and if we can just have a motion again, go through the process, even though we did that already once before, so.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Is there any more discussion before we? Okay, roll call vote.
Member Hernandez.
Aye.
Member Martinez.
Aye.
Member Pacheco.
Aye.
Vice President Jaco.
Aye.
President Gonzalez.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, great. And that leads us to item 9.1, information item, OGSD Department of Special Education Task Force. Superintendent, will you please present?
Yes, thank you, President Hernandez. We're happy to have this presentation for you tonight. And also happy to have some members of our special ed task force that are with us, I believe, tonight as well. So I'd like to have our Assistant Superintendent, Ms. Amy Bowles, introduce the item.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Monzo, President Gonzalez, and members of the board. It is my pleasure to introduce this information item for you this evening. Our Department of Special Education, which is nested within Educational Services, has been working towards efforts in improving special education services, the delivery model via the development of a special education task force. I know that we have been getting feedback and partnership and just a perspective of our wonderful special education staff, including teachers, our support providers, our instructional assistants. And it really is in efforts to work together with them side by side to come to solutions for some of the issues and the concerns that they brought forward. We listen to them, and all of their feedback is important to us. And for the first time, under the guidance of the superintendent and the support of the board, we've developed a special education task force to meet monthly. We've had 3 meetings up until this point, and the goal is to bring together a cross-section of educational partners to ensure that staff have a voice on how and why special education services are provided. We know that it's dynamic work, it's ever changing, and it's gonna take some time, but we've developed a strategic action plan with the goal of 3 to 5 years to enact all of those actions. And we meet monthly with parents of special kids with students with special needs, our instructional assistants, administrators, members of our support staff for special education, psychologists, speech language pathologists. And like I said, we've only had 3 meetings up to this point, but I just really appreciate everybody showing up at the end of the day, after all the work they have done in service of our students, to be able to come together in growth-oriented ways to be able to come to solutions. So we know that we're not there yet, but we're excited about the start that we have developed collaboratively. And I have to say the parent voice there has been really fantastic to see, as well as our instructional assistants, because in our regular special education team meetings, their schedules don't always allow for them to join us for that. And so they're there here at the task force meeting. So it is my pleasure to turn it over to our director, Luciana Park, to give more information to this item. We also have members of our Special Education Council here with her to help give you some more information about our task force and the work that they're doing in service of our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent Bowles, and good evening, board. Thank you for having us here today. Our department has come up with a vision and a mission statement to guide our work every day. Our vision is to forge strong, positive connections with students so they can achieve independence, build confidence, and gain academic knowledge. And our mission is
Testing 1, 2, 3.
cultivating excellence in every student.
some of the department happenings, as Assistant Superintendent Bowles mentioned, we will be giving you more details on the task force, but other things that we have happening at our department, we have our very own special education CAC, or Parent Advisory Group. And this is a group that just comes to volunteer parents that come together that give us guidance in terms of the work that we should be doing that impact our students. And I'm very proud to say that we will have our very first special education CAC event early February park, where the parents are just coming together and inviting all our special education parents to form community. And then we also do have our Special Education Leadership Committee, which is our SELC. In special ed, there's a lot of acronyms. So this is one that our certificated staff come together and meet with our special ed council team here and just kind of bring ideas and suggestions and comments and concerns from the sites over to us in central office. And then one of the pieces of feedback that we received early on was that the team would like to have some specialized professional development that are specific to the work that they do day in and day out with their students. And so we developed this year specialized PD days, or the 3 AD days that our staff have. We have half days where the entire department comes together, and program specialist Hagman will talk to you a little bit about those. And we also instituted our first ever summer institute last summer, which was a great success of 3 days of learning, where again, program specialist Hagman will give you a little bit update on that. And then we also have our curriculum SIG, or special interest group, and that's a group of volunteer teachers that are looking and exploring and innovating our special ed curriculum so that our students there's a little bit more of a continuum from grade to grade as they progress through the curriculum as well. And then one of the things, sorry. As I reflected on our values, this quote resonated a lot with me. And coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, working together is success, by Henry Ford. That we recognize that the work to innovate our department cannot be done alone. And under the guidance and support of our superintendent, our very first task force was created. We had a pleasure to have him introduce our task force at our first task force meeting. We'll see it at another time. Our task force, as Assistant Superintendent Bowles mentioned, and involves every stakeholder member within our department. So it involves parents of both SDC programs as well as RSP programs. We have certificated staff, again, SDC teachers, RSP teachers, Gen Ed teachers, SLPs, principals, OTs, APs, and psychologists. As well as we have classified staff, our instructional assistants and administrative staff are part of our task force. In total, we have about 32 members of the task force that we meet on a monthly. It is not a closed group, and in fact, our OGA president is also part of our task force and brings great ideas to our group as well. Next up, I will invite Coordinator Duffy to share a little bit more about the purpose and the overview of our task force.
Thank you, Director Park. Thank you, Board. Here I will give you an overview and purpose of the task force. We are bridging the Special Education Task Force with the 3 to 5 year strategic plan that is transparent, collaborative, and solution-oriented. Through the development of our strategic plan, it provides staff with the opportunity to prioritize and monitor special education goals and allows for communication between staff and administration. It gives the department and our educational partners the ability to celebrate our successes and look closely at our areas of potential growth. The Special Education Department has created special interest groups, what we call SIGs, within our department. During our monthly task force meetings, educational partners and special education council members broke into working SIG groups to focus on the revision of the procedural handbook, the IA resource guide or instructional assistant resource guide, and the strategic action plan.
So what is our special education action plan? We are focusing on a variety of action items that keep students in the least restrictive environment at the forefront of our work while creating systems, procedures, and district-wide policies. A few of those action items include the Special Education Task Force, the Special Education Procedural Manual, which Special Education TOSA Colin will discuss next, and how our department can reduce the number of initial assessments yearly. Also, we're looking closely at our inclusive practices by the percentage or the amount of time daily a student is receiving special education services. And lastly, we are continuously monitoring staff caseloads and staying within educational code and our staff's collective bargaining agreements. I would now like to invite our special education TOSA, Colin, up to explain the special education procedural manual.
Coordinator Duffy, and thank you, Lauren. I'm excited to be here tonight to explain a little bit more about our procedural handbook. Our department has adopted a procedural manual for all of our special education staff. We're currently working on revisions to help streamline information and remain current with changes in special education and laws and practices. A few of our main components in our manual are policies and procedures, looking at equitable guidance and accountability for all staff, best practices to stay aligned with evidence-based practices. Short people, thank you. Legal guidance. Oh, that's okay. If you can hear me now, thank you. Legal guidance to provide expectations and clarity on law, which is often confusing for our staff, and making sure we are SELPA aligned to provide consistency aligned along with all the districts in our SELPA. Some of the areas we are working on behind the scenes to improve practices are curriculum exploration, SWOT analysis, taking a deeper dive into our preschool to improve program and service delivery models, change of placement processes, and improving our overall IEP facilitation. As part of our task force, we ask for feedback forms at the end of each session. We are using the feedback to improve our policies and practices. Another purpose of the task force is to celebrate our successes as a department. I would like to share some of the feedback with you at this time. After the first task force, we received the following feedback. Great way to make SPED better. Very organized and inspired. Consistent opportunity to revisit the process monthly. I'm not going to read all of them, but they're all in there. And I'd like to share a few more comments after our second task force meeting. We need to focus on moving kids to less restrictive environments versus exiting students. Process feedback. Would love to continue process of unpacking, brainstorming in SIGs, our small interest groups. I'd love to do some research on specific solutions. We have ideas, but do those ideas get us to the result we think it will? I'm sure a lot of this is just what we're doing, trying something. And with that, I will turn it over to Program Specialist Hagman to share an overview of our professional development and our Summer Institute.
Thank you, TOSA Colin and Board of Trustees. Contrary to popular belief or what you've heard from Superintendent Monzo or from Assistant Superintendent Boyd, I will not be wrapping my portion of this. Sorry. Anyhow, Tonight, I'm going to share with you some of the ways that we are supporting our special education teachers and support providers, including our instructional assistants, with professional development opportunities. One of the things that we have heard from special education staff across the district is the need for professional development that was geared towards the needs of our students and staff. Trying to find the time to hold those professional development trainings has been a challenge. This year, our special ed department was allowed to use all 3 district PD days to plan relevant trainings for all of our special education staff. This past November, we held our very first full day professional development. We were able to offer legal sessions with our attorneys, de-escalation training with our RBTs, skill acquisition and task differentiation with Positive Approaches, who provides our ABA services, as well as teacher-led trainings on the Sandy, SACE training, job-alike collaboration, And we even had a full day of training for our IAs that was led by Renee, who was here earlier, who is also part of our special ed task force. Some of the feedback that we received from participants were, the presentation was amazing and helpful. The explanation was direct and easy to understand. Great information, love the game. Learning new terms, terminologies, programs, and support our district is offering or undertaking is the positive in this training. Hands-on, specific, and relevant to developmental needs. More PDs like this. Wish I had more time, and could have stayed. Our SPED leadership team is currently reaching out to our SPED staff to get input on topics that they would like to see at our February PD Day. Another professional growth opportunity that we offered our special ed staff was our first ever Summer Institute. This was a full 3 days of learning offered to all of our special education staff, including the instructional assistants, back in June. We had close to 60 staff who were willing to participate during their summer break. During the Summer Institute, we offered a variety of sessions. Presenters included our legal team, Mark Perchin on team building and handling difficult conversations, the Inclusion Collaborative, and the SELPA. We also had safety care training by our RBTs. Our special ed coach did a SACE training, and we had sessions on behavior management and trauma-informed practices. Some of the feedback that we received from that, I wish this could be a possibility for PD days in the future. Thank you, SPED team, for putting this institute together. Topics were covered well and worth my time. I got so much out of each session I took. The speakers were dynamic and didn't just lecture. It would be fantastic if we could do a SPED only PD day during the school year. So as you can see, this PD directed towards our special ed staff is so much needed and appreciated. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our director, Mark. Thank you.
I would like to present a little bit of data and statistics that kind of guide the work that we do, and it's a means of us, it's a measuring tool for us as to are we growing and progressing in the right direction. So this first chart shows you that general enrollment has been declining, as you all know, we've heard plenty of times. And on the flip side of that, special ed enrollment has been increasing. So 10% of our student population is currently also enrolled as a special ed student. Our district recently had been identified as significantly disproportionate in the identification of Latino students having a specific learning disability. And as part of that improvement plan, we conducted a file review to better understand the root cause of this over-identification. And so these were some of the qualitative findings that we found out of that file review, where 66% of the students had initial eligibility at a preschool level. 61% had 0 SST needing documented. 100% of the files had no evidence of a 504, and 61% of the files were male students, and 77 of those were English language speakers. And most of those referrals came from parents at a 72%. In prioritizing action items from our strategic plan, analyzing our department data, and the continuous open dialogue with all stakeholders, we developed 3 goals for this school year. The first goal is to decrease the number of initial assessments by 5%. Our baseline from last year was 300 initial assessments in the school year. And so this year we would like to target at 285. Our second goal is to see more of our students included in the general education classrooms. And so really looking at each site, focusing on decreasing their, or exiting their special education students by 2 counts. And goal 3 is to decrease the overall percentage of students enrolled in special education services and supports, and and decreasing it by 3 to 5%. Our baseline from last year is 18%. Lastly, in line with our value of strong open communication, I would like to highlight our biweekly quick sheets. And those are kind of like newsletters that we put out every 2 weeks to our entire department. And it's just myself and my council team. We put it together. And it has been really helpful to disseminate information out to the department that are just kind of informational items or reminders. And that way our monthly meetings that we had as a whole department has now become Java-like meetings because again, the staff had been requesting time to collaborate with one another and really emphasizing the fact that there's so much knowledge and we don't get to tap into each other's expertise. And so our special ed monthly meetings are now Java-like meetings, and we have biweekly quick sheets in order to disseminate information. Similarly, we've gotten feedback where principals would love to have a one-stop shop of all the information that they could need for special ed and all the updates because as Assistant Superintendent Bowles mentioned, special ed is very dynamic and fluid, ever-changing, and so we developed our principals portal. You do have the slides, and these are links, and you can kind of click on that, and you can see a little bit more about that. As we look ahead, the road is long and windy, and through continued work with all our stakeholders, these are some of the areas that we would like to continue to grow and develop. And really looking at RSP delivery model, we have recognized that our continuum from RSP from like elementary all the way to intermediate, there's a huge difference, and it kind of really depends on which learning community you're at. And so trying to calibrate that. Looking at possible piloting of a co-taught elementary level class. We do not have co-taught classes at elementary level. And so looking at how we could do that. And one that I'm particularly excited about, not only because of my behavioral background, but as really working together in building capacity in behavior management, not only in special ed, but also in gen ed. And so we will have, we are offering 4 Saturday trainings on behavior management and de-escalation for our general education teachers and staff, including our IAs as well. And we already have about 66 people interested in it, so that's super exciting. And then the continued work within our task force of again increasing utilization of our handbook and revision of our handbook, development of the IA resource guide, as well as continued work on the strategic plan. In closing, we are thankful for the opportunity to share a little of our world with you. We're especially thankful for such supportive and courageous executive team, as well as our ever hardworking and loyal department team members. Thank you again. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much, Director Park and the team, the Special Education Council for presenting tonight. I kind of look at this as the biggest kind of comparison I can have is to an iceberg. And I know that there are a lot of things above the surface that we need to look at and address, concerns that are coming up, some of which you've heard this evening, and we're aware of that. But we do appreciate the opportunity of the task force to really dive into the very, very deep waters of the systems that surround some of those, you know, ever-present daily challenges. So we don't want to minimize those feedback loops that we are receiving from our really, really hardworking staff or with students every day. But it's with the cooperation and working alongside the members of the task force that I think we can get to the deeper systematic work so that we can really make changes in a consistent and successful and supportive delivery system of services for our students with special needs. If you have any questions, we can help to answer them at this time, but thank you so much for the opportunity to share.
Okay, so first we'll go ahead and address public. Is there anyone from the public to speak on this item? First, we have Sarah Woodruff.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sarah Woodrow. I am a school psychologist in the Oak Grove School District. I'm the lead psychologist. We actually have other leads here as well. leads of speech, OT, and APE. I've been in the district for 16 years. I love this district and I've loved working with the people in this district. I've definitely seen the roller coaster that has happened over the last 16 years due to various reasons, both within and outside of our control, as far as what's happened with recessions and COVID and rising housing prices and closing schools. I do want to acknowledge that the district has definitely put emphasis and focused on awareness around mental health, and looked at how we can increase that both in training as well as providing direct support to our students. And I do want to acknowledge that we've had, as you've just heard through our special education task force, we've definitely had more of a focus on professional development that is specific to special education. And I know that was very much needed and appreciated. And there has been an increase in platforms for feedback. So we definitely are looking at moving in the right direction, which is very much appreciative. I think we'd also be remiss if we did not speak transparently about the continued needs that we still do have. So definitely, I know Director Park touched on making sure that we have just consistency among programming among sites, especially so students can be served in their home community. It really depends on what school you go to and what services you get. And that's especially at the junior high level. So we definitely have a lack of equity when it comes to making sure that we are providing our students with what they need, meeting their needs, and offering a free and appropriate education. We also have this at the preschool level because we've had laws that have very recently changed around how we are looking at qualifying students for special education. The state actually changed this last year in order to make sure that we're having more intensive services as far as early intervention, which we all know is key and crucial. The ramifications of that, or the consequences of that, is that our district was not prepared to receive and offer services to serve these students early on. So that's definitely a need that we need to look at. We practice a co-taught model at Burnell, which is primarily my site where I'm at and have been for the last couple years. And it is an amazing model to support students with mild to moderate needs. However, we do have students that come from special day class programs, and because they happen to live in the Burnell community, we don't have other classes to support their needs and other core curriculum. We've also have a lack of staffing and a huge turnover that we've had in the last few years as well. So I definitely want to encourage those conversations and be open and transparent about that, and work together to support all students. Thank you, Sarah. Next, we have Valerie.
There is not enough speech and language pathologists to meet the needs of the students we are currently serving. There are more assessments than we can complete within the legal timeline, which requires us to work outside our contract hours to complete. We are starting to have more students than we have capacity. I love working at this district, and I truly enjoy working with the students, the staff, and the families in my class. And I appreciate your time for listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valerie. Are there any comments online at this time?
There are no virtual comments.
Can you guys hear me? There we go. Sorry about that. So I did have a question. We heard previously in this meeting and in a few meetings before that there are some grievances around the actual matrix for identifying SPED students. I was wondering if there's any efforts into revisiting that.
Actually, yes, just this week, Director Park came in to our lead principals meeting. We've been discussing that in our ESE managers to see what kind of adaptations we can make to the change of placement process. We're, kind of taking a look at how we may even increase partnership of other special education staff members. There's an idea of maybe there's a panel of people who kind of review the request for a change of placement so that we can really kind of see if the students' needs that are being presented really match with the appropriate program. So we do have a matrix, but I think it's really in that process of making the decision and the change of placement where we can refine a little bit more of that decision making and the possibility of streamlining the data that's collected, as well as maybe opening up the people who are in the room in making that decision of change of placement is something we're certainly looking at. And so I know that there was one slide that represented kind of what percentages. There are some other topics we're working on. Change of placement is one of them. And so part of that is really looking at when there is a request for a change of placement to a program, is that program the right fit and does it match up with the model of what that class is intended to be? So we haven't ironed that out. We just brought it to lead principals for some feedback. I know that Director Park has been bringing to some of the support staff too in special education to take a look at it, but it's a conversation. We know we need to refine that process.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And then with regards to I believe it was the Latinx student population that we found overrepresented. When we revisited those file cases, were there any instances in which we found children were maybe either misplaced in like moderate to mediate classrooms, or they didn't belong in the program at all? Did we see any of that?
I think the file review was really about how are students getting identified for special education in Oak Grove, and what are the processes? Are they consistent? Are there checks along the way? Is there data? Are there student study teams being, put into place? Or are we fast tracking students through with limited information before really looking and dissecting again? Is this really a special education need and a disability, or do we really have to, through this whole process, shore up and maybe look at our practices in general education? How can we support general education teachers to provide foundational support as well as intervention support in tier 2 and tier 3? So in fact, as part of the consent agenda item today, there was a plan that we have been going through over the last 3 months and looking at data. The file review is one of those, to really see what is that we can do to address this disproportionality. So we've been meeting with parents through that process. We've had empathy interviews with several parents as well as other staff members to really see how we can make that more consistent, because really what we found, maybe more so that not about if students have been misidentified, but really what is the identification process consistent? Are the structures for remediation or intervention consistent? I think that's what Sarah Woodrow, our lead psychologist, pointed to, is just really delivering a consistent, not only delivery model of services, but a consistent protocol and model of how we're assessing and how we, not just assessing, but how we're recommending or going through that process of identifying students.
Okay, and so it sounds like as you guys are ironing this out, I guess my question is, like, at what point are we revisiting files and seeing what students have been misplaced, right? Because it sounds like we're reevaluating how they get there. But at what point are we seeing what children are falling through the cracks, maybe do belong in general ed, things like that?
Yeah, and so it's part of a student's IEP. It at minimum is a requirement to revisit in an annual IEP how students are doing, how they're progressing, whether or not they need to look at other offers of a free and appropriate education. And so that's where you may take a look at if there's any adjustments that need to be made, or whether there are opportunities to move to a less restrictive environment for the students. Additionally, we get that data annually from the California Department of Education. So this spring, we'll be getting new data on our identification and whether or not we are disproportionate. I think we're still feeling some of the effects of COVID, and especially our students with disabilities who are home, sometimes on their own during distance learning. And as Director Park pointed out, our enrollment in general has been declining, but our special ed numbers have been increasing. So we're really taking a look at how we can, balance that out to be more proportionate, because in general, our identification is disproportionate. You saw that in that chart. And so we're looking forward to seeing where the data comes in from CDE this spring to see if some of our initial efforts have made a difference, but it's going to be continued work for sure. And then now that the plan has been approved by the board to run our SIM for CSACE plan to really address some of the structures in general education, we really hope that that's going to also make a difference in those numbers as well.
I see. And then one last question. So sorry. Is there any training that's being done at a regular basis for teachers to be able to identify when the student is being misplaced? I worry that sometimes teachers are looking through these assessments with the lens that this child belongs in special ed, right? And maybe not the possibility that they've been misplaced and maybe they don't belong in the program. Is there any training that goes along with, okay, let me look at this. These are indicators that this child may not be, eligible for this program, or maybe not for this classroom?
I think there's definitely opportunity to, increase our professional development offerings for our general education teachers around the area of special education and things they can be taking a look at. We do have a focus in general this year around multi-tiered systems of support and really talking with teachers and really sharing the importance of ensuring that we have strong systems and structures in tier 1, that we really need to do that first before we even entertain and look at whether or not a student may have a disability. Now, there are some extreme cases of students in need where our experts in the room, many of us here, work alongside our department to see, that may not be the case, but we in general really want to ensure that there is time to institute all of those tier 1 practices in academics, social, emotional, and behavioral. And I think this year, to speak to your question, is that we're at least trying to define clearly what are our systems of support in these tiers. And sometimes teachers may not even know what's available to them. And so we're kind of starting with that transparency. In fact, right after the break, we're getting ready to send the pyramids of all of our multi-tiered systems of support, hard copies, color copies to all of our teachers in January. They've received soft copies of those this year. But that's just one step in our efforts in trying to be transparent about what we offer and the steps we need to really factor in before going straight to looking at an assessment for a student.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. First and foremost, thank you for the presentation. I know there's a lot of work that goes into that and trying to summarize just the depth of work that you all are doing. And also, it's really, I think, a relief to see that the task force exists, especially after seeing, community members and educators really have to advocate for themselves of really calling out the need for help and support. And so I really appreciate the response to that and the collaborative effort to try to problem solve. Along the lines with the acknowledgement of kind of this disproportionate representation, I'm curious, looking at the qualitative findings, just how you all are interpreting the findings and how that's impacting the work of the task force. Just because, and maybe if you can just kind of highlight or clarify, because these things, the data is a little alarming to me. So maybe I want to make sure I'm understanding how you're seeing the data and how you're intended the data to be presented. Just if these are the findings of students who have been identified and seeing things of 70% where there was no specified interventions being documented, that is alarming. So am I reading that correctly? And if you can just elaborate a little bit.
Sure. As part of that Sim for CSIS plan that was a part of a consent item tonight, we shared the plan, and part of that plan is after all of that analysis, the case study being one, empathy interviews being another, a deep dive into data being a third. We worked together with a technical assistance facilitator, Dr. Mildred Brown, who is an expert in this work and working with districts that are disproportionate. And so after all of that was done, it was really the work of really figuring out what are the root causes? What do we really feel like are the root causes? And they're documented in this monitoring plan, but in short, I think there are 4 total that we put together here with the quantitative and the qualitative data that went to support these findings as our root causes. So one, the first root cause that was identified is that cultural dissonance, staff expectations, and misconceptions around special education result in a district culture that lacks meaningful student relationships and culturally responsive practices as evidenced by implicit and explicit bias. That's one of the root causes that we're exploring in our work in Sim for CSACE. Root cause number 2 was inconsistent practices in implementation and core instruction and supplemental interventions have led to the belief that learning differences can only be addressed through special education. That was root cause number 2 that the team came up with in developing this plan. Root cause number 3, staff requires additional support and knowledge to differentiate between a language disorder or a language disability versus second language acquisition, which results in increased referrals to special education. And so that's another root cause that we're exploring through this plan that was presented and approved tonight. And then lastly, we really want to address the connection to school and the chronic absenteeism rate. And so what are we doing also to make sure that students are feeling connected to school, especially those who are having difficulty connecting with peers or feel like school is too difficult for them. And so with those things that you looked at through the case study, in addition to the empathy interviews, in addition to all the data dive that included not just academic data, but behavioral data, chronic absenteeism data. We, as a team, we recognize those 4 root causes. And then what we're doing as laid out in this plan is starting small at 2 schools that have the highest population of Latino students and also the highest number traditionally of initial assessments, and that's Edenville and Christopher. So the plan that was part of the consent agenda item today will be enacting that plan in a small scale at Christopher and Edenville, addressing those 4 root causes, in addition to work that we're doing with Dr. Brown's team around developing a behavior matrix, a clear behavior matrix to be utilized across the district. So we really did spend some time, in addition to what we've been doing with the task force, and looking at that data to see what our next steps are. And so that's presented in that plan that was before you in consent item tonight.
Thank you. I have two more questions. One is to that point, right? Because as an educator, I see things, and as a woman and as a Black woman educator, I see things through a different lens oftentimes. And so looking at the task force composition, I see that it's made up of parents, classified and certificated staff, but I'm just wondering if you can give a breakdown of what percentage of that is parents, and then even further, is there a breakdown of gender, ethnicity, class, and even years of experience?
Yeah, we can certainly get that data to you. I don't have it in front of me currently, but our team can work on getting that to you. Additionally, another educational partner group that we have is specific to this Sim for CSACE work. And in that, we specifically had to have the parents who represented our Latino student group. And we also had a parent, African-American parent, who we brought into that group as well. And so that was a requirement for that educational partners group. And so that educational partners group runs concurrently with the task force, runs concurrently with CAC. And then it is our responsibility to report on our status of this plan that was approved tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it possible just in the future, I would just love to hear a little bit more, in addition to the breakdown, but also just a little more discussion just around those not just the disproportionate rates, right, but also those communities and their voices, and their input, right? And just a little more depth even on the data and the qualitative and the interpretation and how you came to that. Because I think that that's an important lens. You know, we are already discussing a group of our community that, you know, is really having to fight for resources. And I just would hate for us to kind of almost marginalize and even further marginalized voices. So just how can we uplift those voices that don't always have an advocate, right? As we can see represented in the data that they're disproportionately represented and that there are assumptions being made about students and families simply because of their ethnicity. Yeah. So just kind of maybe offset that and lift up those voices. And then last but not least, I'm excited about the community event that's taking place. And I just was curious when that is, and can we receive an invitation or can I just crash the party?
Absolutely. You're welcome to join. It's going to be in February and it's going to be at a local park.
Okay.
Yeah. February 3rd. Oh, my daughter's birthday. February 3rd. We'll get the detail.
Send me an email.
We'll get the invitation to you. And also to that end, Vice President Jaco, as part of that that report or the plan to in each of those root causes that I mentioned to you, on the other side of that report, you'll see on the right side actual quotes from the focus groups and the empathy interviews that we felt represented from the parents that represented those root causes. Supported that as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we'll follow up with you about the composition of the task force. Yep.
Thank you.
And then I had a clarifying question, just very quickly. So sorry. You had mentioned that I think it was 72% parent referrals. Does that mean that? Can you clarify on what that means in that group?
Yeah, that means that of those assessments that were done, they were initiated. 72% of them were initiated by parents.
So they wanted the assessment, but they didn't. Okay.
They are the one who requested the assessment. Yes.
There's somebody else, I guess, I think.
Yeah, Maripaz, did you want to?
I mean, if the item's already been approved, it's about this one? Oh, okay, yeah, of course.
And this is from one of our psychologists, Kennedy Whitaker. And she writes, so I just wanted to start off by saying that school psychologists are covering 2 to 3 schools at a time for the entire school year. Some schools get a school psychologist 1 day, 2 days, 3 or 4 or 5 days a week based on special education programs and other factors like enrollment or TWEBE. The thing that no one is realizing at the elementary school level is that we only have one principal. If that principal needs support in general education or SPED, then the school psychologists are called. We support students' behavior, i.e. if there is a kiddo that you can't calm down or throwing books and having a meltdown, or a kiddo trying to leave the school grounds because they are too young to understand the danger, etc. We support tier 1, 2 interventions and collaborate with teachers for instructional differentiation and for general education and our SPED kiddos. And then there are emergency calls such as a risk assessments, which include but aren't limited to suicidal ideation, self-harm, and child abuse. This is just a general education portion of our school sites that we are helping with, which takes up about 50% of our time during the week. Once we get to our special education kiddos, we have students that are already on our caseload and our programs to reevaluate, which takes at the very least 20 hours per student. Plus, we have to do caseload in our program. Plus, we have to do initial assessments for special education, which can take 25 to 45 hours, depending on the severity. All we want is some type of help in the future because we love our jobs, we love the kids, we love the people we work with. We are being burnt out because there is so much need and not enough general education support. This lack of support can ultimately cause more turnover for teachers because behaviors become worse, and then students become more apathetic because teachers and staff are burnt out. I hope that in the future, they will place a school psychologist at every school so that they can actually have the bandwidth to support general ed and SPED. It's like a domino effect. If there's less support in general education, then our kids have wider learning gaps and they end up being assessed for special education. Whereas if that support was given, that connection was given, then we would have more students be successful. One school psychologist to support 2 school populations of 300 to 500 students is a disservice to the children and to the staff who actually want to help but don't have the time to support. Thank you for listening.
Thanks. And then just one more question or maybe like a concern going forward. I know that we mentioned and we talked about the 72% parent referrals. I'm wondering if there's a way, because it seems like that could be accurate or it could be completely skewed, right? I'm wondering if there's a way that we can see Dr. Jago made a good point, whether they came to the school and said, hey, my child is struggling in school, we want to have an assessment, or they're told in parent-teacher conferences or different ways, right? Because if it's a recommendation from the teacher, right, for their parent to request an assessment, then it's still kind of a request from the teacher for assessment, and we can still dive deeper. So yeah, so to be able to really see if this data is skewed or not, if there's a way to capture why the parent is requesting an assessment. Is there any other board questions or comments? Okay.
Just lastly, just want to thank the team that are here, and also just to think as I started and during my superintendent comments that we recognize, and was mentioned by Ms. Assistant Superintendent Bowles, that this is a continuing conversation and an effort to find areas of opportunities as we continue doing this work. And I think the task force is a place where there's a consistent opportunity to hear voices from our professionals and our experts. And of course, we have our commitment to continue to expand that dialogue, and particularly
and to last is, I'm really excited to obviously have announced that I'll be running for the Santa Clara County Board of Education. There hasn't been, thank you. There hasn't been a trustee from our board to represent that area. And I really hope that to continue to serve our district and our students and my home and our home if I'm elected to that board. So I am just excited to have launched that race a year in advance. And the last thing I want to say is just congratulations to our new leadership and thank you to our incredible audience who stuck it through to the very end. And I hope everybody has a fantastic holiday. Thank you.
All right. So I definitely want to just elevate the amazing time that we had at the CSBA conference. There was just so much learning. It was really difficult to choose which session to go to. But again, just great to be in community and collaborate with some other leaders and bring back some of these ideas. You know, we're all facing very similar crises at our districts across California. And so it was just a great moment to pause and sort of, again, just reimagine what our schools can be. I was able to attend a session on leading district sustainability efforts and some education that they're doing around the water that they're using and educating people on how to read even their own PGE bills. There was a session I attended about maximizing school safety and how they just coordinate with their local fire people, how they just go through different emergency preparedness protocols, some behavior threat assessments, and then of course budget, because that one always does come up at every conference that we're at. Just, you know, what are we going to do as a state? And so I think that's really where I'm really happy that a lot of our organizing folks are really looking towards the state to push and kind of elbow them and sort of responding to our needs. And so it was a great time. And again, just great opportunity for us to step back from our day-to-day jobs, from facilitating meetings here and just being able to reimagine our future. I also want to thank President Maripaz for our meeting last week, along with Melissa and Martha. It was great to just take a couple hours again to hear how some of our school sites are doing, hear of the different concerns. And I just encourage all of you to continue to reach out to us via email or come to our board meetings. And lastly, congratulations, President Gonzalez and Vice President Jaco. I've been so honored to serve as board president. And again, I'm just very eager to see where y'all lead us. And I'm very excited. So congratulations and thank you.
Right. I was getting late. Just wanted to share my experience as well at CSBA. I had a great time with the board, with Ms. Dubeja. It was a great time getting to know more of the executive staff. I do want to share, we attended a lot of meetings, a lot of workshops, but one that really resonated with me is I attended a meeting where they said, hey, if you were in kindergarten and you got an envelope like this in your chair, I opened it. It's an example. And you saw this in your table, in your seat, you opened it and it says, you are amazing. You are seriously amazing. And you saw this when you were in your kindergarten. I was like, oh, that's really cool. So I love that. I spoke about it. I would have felt appreciated. I would have felt more empowered. I would have felt more in charge of my life and kind of, you know, positive. So I really loved it. That was a good idea. Let me see what this one says here. It's brought an extra one for everyone. I wanted to share it with everybody. I thought it was a good idea. It's a different one. This has a different one. So I'll have like inspirational stuff for the kids, but this is more simple. I like the simple one. You know, simple, read it and get recognized for your hard work. So I think this is a good idea and I wanted to share that with everybody. And thank you.
All right. Well, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you for electing me as your vice president. I'm elated to learn from you and partner with you and really just continue to build you all have just coming in, you all already had a sense of community, right? So just continuing to grow that and continue to build on that. I know that we're problem solvers just as educators. So we're always looking at the data to see where we're falling short and where we need to improve and how we need to fix stuff, right? We're just here to fix stuff. And so sometimes because we tend to focus on that, we don't always notice or put at the forefront the amazing work that's happening. And also how far we've come and where we are, right? And being at CSBA and getting to talk with other trustees, and I'm trying to put it into words to say like we're kind of doing all right, we're doing pretty well, and our board has a good just as working professionals and colleagues, that we respect each other and we genuinely get along. We can disagree and we can have different opinions, but we genuinely have respect for each other. And that is not the case if you've turned on the news anytime soon recently. So I just want to kind of highlight that and say, okay, yeah, we have work to do, but we're doing it together. And that really resonates. Especially, I went to several workshops, but one in particular on community schools. And just really getting to hear from the other districts and how they're approaching it at their beginning stages and those that are much further along. And I just am really excited about our work around that, because I feel like it actually gives a name for the work that we're already doing. As far as trying to bring in parents and make sure that we're talking with students and that we're collaborating, that we're working together, it really just gives a name to the work that we're already doing. So I'm looking forward to that. And also just want to highlight, I went to the DEIB meeting, and part of that amazing work, right? It's good to give out buzzwords, right? Equity and justice and inclusion, right? Like those are really fun words. We like to say those things. But how does that actually look? And at the DEIB meeting, there were breakout sessions and discussing one of the books. And especially as educators, we're really good at prepping to teach, but we don't always go through the experience ourselves as students. And when you're talking about equity and inclusion, it's important to do that work yourself as an individual, allow yourself to be vulnerable, really reflect on your own positionality and your own identities and your experiences with that, and process that. And what was really powerful about that meeting and the workshops and the breakout sessions that took place in that meeting is that you saw the adults in the space being vulnerable and sharing about their own identities and experiences. And I feel like that was really powerful. And just say thank you, Superintendent, or I'm sorry, he's not trying to take your job. I'm trying, Associate Superintendent, I'm gonna give him your job. For just creating the space and for leading that work, because I feel like as our educators and community members can do that, like we'll be better equipped to lead our students in doing that. So I just want to shout that out and uplift that as something that we're doing well. So.
Awesome. So as we close out on our last meeting of the year, I just want to thank the board, our staff, and our entire district for all the work that we've done. It's not always easy, and it's hardly ever thanked or appreciated or sometimes even rewarded. But I want to let you know that not just as a board member, but as a parent of children that attend this district and thrive in this district, and as somebody who's come from this district, that all of your work is noticed and appreciated by myself and so many others, especially our students here. I hope that you guys can take the rest of your time and especially your breaks to reflect on your year and be proud of the work that you've done, even if it hasn't maybe given you the results that you'd like. Obviously, we still have a lot of things to work towards this coming year, but the work that we've done and the work that you all have done has been hard and meaningful. And I really hope that you guys take your break to reflect and appreciate yourselves and take pride in the work that you guys do. So with that, I will go ahead and move on to our last item, which is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Opposed?